Welcome to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. Our mission is to help worship leaders come away with tools to improve their ministry and to set their churches up with a great worship culture. Welcome today as we talk about the 7 basics of worship leadership in the local church. So hey Tim, how's it going?
It's going really well. All kinds of fun things happening, and it's been a great day. It's a beautiful day to be sitting in Troy, Illinois, recording a podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, but is that because it's raining outside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's just fun to sit around and do something like this.
Yeah. No, it's always fun to get together and podcast. But I'm doing good. Can't complain about literally anything in life.
That's good.
There was sarcasm in that. But
When it's literal, that's even better.
Well, hey, we've got a little bit of time today, and it's been a while since we've introduced ourselves. So to all the new folks out there who are joining us, we just want to say welcome, and let's take a few minutes to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, that'd be good. We do have a lot of new people, and they both should get a chance to meet us.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into these questions so those 2 new folks can know a little bit more about us. Thanks, Mom, for listening. Oh man, this is fun already. So Tim, question number 1 for you: what was your favorite age growing up?
Well, I would have to think, but I would say I remember the age of 7 because I remember a particular birthday party that I had, and so that was down in West Frankfort, Illinois, and I don't really remember much about the birthday party. I just remember having one, and so I like the age of 7.
What church were you at there?
It was Antioch United Methodist Church, where
right.
my dad was a pastor.
Nice.
And we lived out in the country, and so it's an interesting childhood time.
That's great.
Yep. What about you? What was your favorite age growing up?
I don't have a specific age. It's more of a range. So for me, it was middle school, and it was because I had no real care or worries in the world. It was just me and my neighborhood friends, and we were playing kickball or street hockey or riding bikes and driving the neighbors crazy. And it was, besides driving the neighbors crazy, it was just a fun time of youthful bliss and innocence. What is your favorite board game right now?
The one we probably played the most, I don't even know if you call it a board game, but over quarantine we played Rummy Cube a lot. And it's like a cross between Scrabble and numbers. And
okay. Is it like Rummy? Like growing up, I play Rummy with my
It's
grandma.
like Rummy, except it's actually with tiles, and then you can take from other people, and you got it. It's like a classic game that lasts for a long time. A lot of strategy.
I would say that's a board game. It's a tabletop game.
Yeah, tabletop game. It's really fun. We played that. I think at one point, just our little notebooks that we keep our game scores in of all the games we've ever played, and we're on volume 10.
Whoa.
I think we played 44 times during the early part of the quarantine.
Oh man, you just made me want to start a new tradition.
Oh, it's a great tradition. We always make notes of what we ate that night and whatever else we did that day, and then
You just changed my life.
So, what's your favorite board game right now?
I really love playing the children's sequence because our oldest, he's 4 right now, and he really likes playing that game. So I'm totally down with playing any game that he wants to actually play.
Yeah.
So.
That's half the battle, is finding the game that everybody likes.
Yeah, he likes that.
All
and
ages.
Yeah, that's true. The other one that he likes that is a little bit, it's not quite as fun, but the game that you and Aaron suggested, that was Spot It.
Oh, yeah. That is a good one.
So the next question is this. How did you meet your wife?
I guess these will have to be in a nutshell since we don't have all day. Just someday we'll have a podcast of just a bunch of questions.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. In a nutshell, we met at college.
Okay.
And she was from Southern Illinois area, but had lived in Pennsylvania for the previous 7 years, junior high and high school. And then her dad got transferred back here, and so she started attending college, same college I was at. She was a year behind me.
Oh, wow.
So we met, and we're friends for a long time. Got married after college. And
the rest is history.
Yep. And here I am.
That's awesome.
And she just sent me a text wondering if I wanted to come home and have a piece of Reese's cake.
Oh, man, what an excellent wife.
Yeah. Well, somebody brought it to our house.
Oh, I thought you at home baking away or something like that. Oh, man, that's magical.
No. How'd you meet Tina?
Well, in a nutshell, she got me at Walmart.
She got you at Walmart.
I was at a community college, and I was working part-time at a Walmart, and she would come literally, there's that word again, every single day that I was working towards the end of my shift, and she'd buy one of two things, a pack of gum or a box of Pop-Tarts, and then she'd just stand there and talk to me for like the last 15 to 20 minutes of my shift.
Huh.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
That's good. That's what you should do for like your 10 or 15-year anniversary some years. Just go to Walmart late one night and buy one thing and stand there.
Just stand there.
Stand around and talk.
It's like, why are you guys here?
It's a long story.
It's a long story. But you too can find love in your checkout aisle. All right. So the last question before we dive into this podcast, Tim, it's what scripture did you read this morning?
Ooh, that's like half accountability question right there. Mine is from Mark. It's the cursing of the fig tree.
Okay.
Mark chapter 11. And how he cursed the fig tree because it wasn't bearing fruit.
Yeah.
And the next day he came back, and then the disciples were like, wow, the tree you cursed is withered away. And then it's like multiple meanings in there. It's really wild, but it's the way the scripture is. But one thing is that the fig tree's cursed because it didn't bear fruit, which is a whole another part of it. And the second part is that Jesus launches into the idea that if you think that's amazing, you can make this mountain go into the sea, and whatever you, Mark 11:24, I think, whatever you ask for in prayer, you'll receive it. And it's just interesting. So
that's awesome.
That's what I read. What about you?
Well, it wasn't this morning. It was late morning / afternoon. Doing a little finishing touches for our youth tonight, and we're beginning a series. And tonight we're talking about making it personal because Jesus knows us by name. And the scripture verse is Luke 19:1-10. It's talking about Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
So because Jesus calls him out by name from the tree.
That's good.
And we could go into the song, but we don't really need to.
All right. Everybody knows it's just a short little song.
Oh, Mark. Oh, Tim Price with the jokes.
Yeah.
We need to get Dan and Josh in here.
Yeah, we really, that would really be good.
That would be a podcast where we need to like not have a real focus because
you couldn't have a real focus.
It would get derailed so bad.
That's true.
All right, well, Tim, let's get into this list. There was a video that you created for the Awakening Worship Conference, which, by the way, you can actually still get access to that content by going to theworshipleadertoolbox.com.
Yeah, and we'd love for you to do that. And this list was really a blog post turned video, now turned podcast. This could be like a cyclical thing.
Wow.
Eventually we could just make another video about the podcast, but I'm just kidding. But this is really just some thoughts of the 7 basics, really for people who are serving in a church worship leading role. That's pretty much the gist of this.
All right, well, the first one here, it says, a heart for God.
Yep, and I always think about this kind of stuff whenever I'm writing up these things, that sometimes I think some of these that we pull out make it seem like we think we should write it, like that should be the first thing. Mm-hmm. But we really need to get past that idea that it's, like we just want the practical stuff and the strategy stuff because, if you don't have a heart for worshiping the Lord, then all these things are just not going to have any kind of, meaning or depth or anything. And even musical ability. Most people equate worship with music, and especially, and I've noticed it even just in the last 20 years, it changed to where the word worship and music is a synonym in most circles. And that's not necessarily the case, although music is scriptural, so I'm not like against that. But worship isn't music. I mean, alone, it's part of it.
Yeah.
Music is a small part of this big thing of worship. So, musical ability is obviously an asset if you're going to lead worship music at a church, but without a desire to like love and serve God and a heart for God, it's really not worship leadership. It's just, just whatever. So it's all going to mix together. And that heart for God's really the foundation for being a worship leader.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Yeah, I whenever I saw this list, I was thinking about it, and the one thing that really stood out to me is people who are enthusiastic about something. They have for example, our pastor Andy, he loves the Cubs, right? And you can tell This is Cardinal Nation, by the way, for those who don't really know. But the baseball team, the Cubs, he's a Cubs fan, and he's passionate about it. And when he talks about it, you can tell that he's passionate about it. And it's because, in a non-like idolistic way, or maybe, I don't really know, that's a different conversation. He has, a heart or passion for the Cubs. So in the same sense, if we're worship leading and we have a passion for it, then that's going to come across when we're leading.
Yep.
So
that is really true. That's good.
All right. So this next one here, it says a heart for the church.
Yep. And these first three are really kind of some foundational ones to these 7 basics. But you have to, if you're going to lead in a church and you're going to lead worship in a church, as one of the key leaders in worship ministry is in that vein, you've got to believe in the mission of the church and have a heart for those people, believers to worship and non-believers to experience God's presence. And so worship leaders really need to enjoy their church. And it'd be really tough, I think, just to be there leading music, but not really try to connect with the congregation and to know them and to love them. And really a heart for the church opens up the freedom to give your all for the, fully engaged for the season that you're there. Because nobody's at a church forever. And so, however long you're there, you're with them and fully engaged. So we're there as like a steward for the season. And really the good news is it's God's church. Mm-hmm. And so our job is to, serve faithfully with love and a servant's heart and basically help lead those folks to be closer to God and closer to, who the church needs to be to reach people in that community. And I don't think any staff worship leader person is out there, begrudgingly serving their church, but there are days when it feels like that. So I don't think anybody would want to say, oh yeah, I'm just here because nobody else will take me or something. But there are times when things aren't going exactly right. And sometimes you got to trudge through some crazy valleys and seasons in a church, but without a heart for the church, you're not going to trudge very long.
Yeah.
You're just going to give up and go.
That's very true.
So
that's a good point.
And speaking of heart for the church, in case people hear the racket, they're putting in new air conditionings about one wall away from our little global studio here. So
are you saying that the heating and cooling system is the heart of the church?
I'm just saying you might hear some racket.
Oh.
There's a lot of drilling going on back there. It may not come through our mics, but they might hear it. A heart for the mission is really the idea that you are with your congregation in your mission field. And so, not that you have to live right there next to the church or right even in that town, but you have to love your community, love the region, and love the people. And the nuts and bolts of what you're doing, the big word that people always throw around at conferences is it's got to work in your context. So if you see a huge production and you're from a small church in a rural area, it's not going to translate.
Yeah.
And so you have to, before you get to the nuts and bolts, really understand what the mission of the church is, and then let the details and the dream and the vision kind of come out of that. And then that, it leads in the right direction, and it allows you to connect with people in your church that have gifts to do what needs to be done here and now, which will help shape leadership, as opposed to coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You're going to, it kind of works both ways. There's a time to say, hey, we're going to go here and get people on board. But other times you got to kind of let it swell within. So
that's good.
And the swelling within takes a lot of patience. It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, so for these first three, outside of heart for God, I think if you don't have that, you probably shouldn't be leading worship. But for me, the heart for the mission is really the next one that drives it home for me. And I know you kind of said like mission as in like maybe like the mission field around you, but really like when it talks about like where the mission or the vision is, I think that's like really one thing that like really holds on to me and where I'm going,
Yeah.
I think you talked about going through like trudging through times, and I think that like if you love the vision and the mission, that will get you through the most areas. So
yep, that's probably true.
Yeah. All right, so this fourth one here, we have growing gifts and skills.
Yeah, and this one, this is one that we've talked about that is just good for beginners and for people that have done it a while. But it's always important to possess a desire to grow in your leadership. So that can be, skill for music, but skill for, running meetings or getting things accomplished or, casting the vision or whatever. And in worship ministry, music and art skills are a big part of the picture. You have to know some of these just to lead, and sort of just to sort of have a, like I heard somebody one time say, you're kind of paying the rent if you can let people know that you're able to do it. And then you kind of build that bridge, and then you open the door for people to grow. So it's going to be hard for a really high class musician to take direction from a leader who isn't able to, talk the talk or, do what it is that you have to do. And of course you want to surround yourself with people better than you, so you don't have to be the best at every instrument or anything, but you just want to be authentic in that. And then this other slide of like leadership skills, just the development and recruitment and deployment and organization and just delegating all those things. A church staff worship leader has an opportunity in life to grow in one of these areas and to keep going that way. And that's going to just transform the ministry. So
that's really good. And you actually kind of like didn't unintentionally maybe a segue here, but like development. So the next thing is that believe in the development of a team.
Well, I was thinking the other day that, do you know of any worship leaders who don't have a team? Like, is there any scenario where a person leads worship all by themselves?
I mean, I'm sure there, like, you mean like in a little country church, I guess there's like a worship, like you talking about like that, or?
Yeah, like I was just trying to think. You could get like philosophical, like if you're just by yourself, you're not leading worship, you're just worshiping.
Yeah.
But if you're with a church of any size, I can't imagine there only being one person in leadership, because either you're a singer and there's a musician, or you're a musician singer and there's a tech person, or and maybe there's a scenario where somebody's just plunking out the piano and there's no tech person or anything. And
so here's a scenario. So like one of the small things that I do as my ministry position is at a satellite church from us, a little offshoot kind of a thing, and it's a small country church, and there's no tech. And if I'm just up there playing my guitar, leading a song, would that be a leader without a team? Or is the church that's there that's singing along with you your team? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, maybe. Like, actually, your scenario of playing guitar and singing and no tech and just telling people to sing along, then you're kind of like a sole worship leader up there.
Yeah.
Like the person that's helping the church do it.
Gotcha.
I was just thinking from the standpoint of, I guess it wouldn't be any size, because a small rural church would have that scenario. But as soon as a church has any kind of production in worship ministry,
I derailed it, didn't I?
Well, I really was trying to wonder if there was a spot. But as soon as you have any kind of sizable situation, then you couldn't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You can't. But even then, maybe somebody could. Maybe somebody's figured out how to get their laptop to do everything, and they're up there and just playing along with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
so you mean like
it'd be ridiculous
for like sound and lyrics and tech and stuff like that?
Yeah, and band members and people to help put it all together. So anyway, all that to say, outside of you, Clint, worship leaders have to really believe in developing a team, and not just. It's just a whole bunch of things that, like, you're not just, for one, you understand that it's not just you able to do it on your own. And you also don't want to assume that, part of the ministry is helping people grow and not just, I don't know what the opposite of that is, but there's just a lot of questions worship leaders need to ask. And one of them is, how can you involve others? How can you involve the church to use their gifts to help lead in worship and be a part of that? And develop, points of entry for people to serve and involve the next generation, and several things that we've talked about over the season of this podcast. But one role of the worship leader really is to develop people who can lead and be a part of the ministry. And it's especially true for when you're not there. Like, who's next?
Yeah.
Not just a Sunday you're gone, but like when you're finished there.
Yeah.
Like, how's that going to happen? So... And again, I don't know any worship leaders who sit around and don't believe in the development of a team. Like, I think people want there to be people helping.
Yeah, I think any kind of like musical person naturally like has a strive for making it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In some aspect, and so I think just even if it's just like, man, we really want to sound really good. We want this song to go over well or whatever. So there's a strive for, even if it's just on the musical front, for development there. But yeah, there's so much about, even looking back across your whole team, so tech and everything, about raising up that next generation.
Yep.
So that's good.
That is good.
We believe in the Worship Leader Toolbox and the work we're able to accomplish by the grace of God and with your partnership. There are 2 simple ways to support this podcast, and the first one is by clicking the support button and commit to sponsoring us on a monthly basis. And with any contribution of 99 cents or more, we will send you a free gift. The second way is through Amazon Smile. Just go to worshipleadertoolbox.com/Amazon to set the one-time link up that allows Harvest to receive a small percentage of your Amazon purchase. All right, so the next one here is faithfulness.
Yep, and this is just, again, kind of a general thought that you need to stay faithful to the process that God's called you to. And maybe this fits along with a heart for the church, and maybe we could actually add in something else that people might find helpful. But it's the job of the worship leader to help prepare the church for ministry. And that sometimes means simple things like just, initiating, planning, and meeting with your pastor and helping people, engage and just doing your best to be faithful to nurture your church to new heights as one of the leaders who is highly visible. So that's interesting about worship ministry, because sometimes a real part-time person will be a worship leader in a church, and they'll be a really highly visible person among the congregation. But in terms of their hour investment, it might be not too much, especially in a part-time kind of role. So it's just it really is a high-profile spot. And then faithfulness could probably go a couple other directions. Just, faithfulness in a life off stage and all those things that go with that.
Yeah. That, this is a total tangent thing, so you can remove this if you want, but it makes me think of in one of the student ministry Facebook groups I'm in, they talked about, hey, has anybody accidentally or purposefully or whatever cussed in front of students or whatever? And I was like, man, that's an interesting thought right there. And I kind of wrote back that if we're accidentally cussing in front of students, then it's probably because we're using that kind of language, in the non-ministry world, and really we shouldn't be doing that, in the non-ministry world, because we're still a representation of the church. So yeah, true. So that's a good one.
Interesting.
All right, Tim, the last one, excel in practical components.
Yep, I also think this is funny because you just put this in there, it pretty much covers everything else. So 7 basics for worship leading, and the last one encompasses 12 things. But just in general, worship leaders have to stick with the processes of all things related to Sunday morning outcome and the flow and whatever. So we could just rattle off a whole list: flow, song selection, teaching, leading, developing, recruiting, thinking of songs, and all that stuff. And some of that just comes by, staying engaged and reading blogs and listening to podcasts and attending conferences and all that stuff, helping to improve the practical side and getting ideas for that, and listening well to suggestions and thoughts from, allies and team members and people who are part of your family and circle. And, just the constant sort of sense that you're evaluating and improving and sort of critiquing without the desperation mode, like, oh my goodness, we're never going to make it. And it's just a hard balance to always try to be improving without getting annoyed.
Yeah.
And so leaders are always stuck in that no matter what kind of world they're in, but it's part of the job. So.
Well, Tim, that was a great list. The 7 basics, it's heart of worship. I'm sorry, that's a song. Heart for God, heart for the church, heart for the mission, growing gifts and skills, believing in the development of a team, faithfulness, and excel at the practical components.
Yep, that's the list.
Well, hey, Tim, thanks so much. And to everyone listening, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And if you could, I would love it if you could share this podcast and also hit the subscribe button. And one last thing that we would love you to do is leave us a 5-star review. It would help us go a long way in reaching other ministry and worship leaders. And we'll see you next time on the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. It's definitely nice to have heating and cooling, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially entering into the winter season here shortly. So,
Yep.
we have officially just dated where we are in the season.
That's true.
Someone could come across this podcast in the summer, and all of a sudden we're talking about winter.
I think you really got to be a professional podcaster not to date yourself.
Oh, no way. I mean,
Do we usually date ourselves?
who knows?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Well, in case anybody's wondering, it's August 1st, and since we're based in Montana, winter comes quick.
Wait, didn't you say in beautiful Troy, Illinois at the beginning of this podcast?
Yeah.